Taliesin, what do you think the best patch in WoW is?
Well, I know what people are going to say is the best patch, but I didn't actually play through it, so I can't really say. I can't agree with what I think the mass opinion will be. So in my own kind of more recent experience, where I've been paying enough attention to WoW to really notice the changes that a new patch brings and things like that.
Are you going to say 3.0 because Tuskars were added?
I mean, I have that date tattooed on my arm, of course.
Oh, your arm. I thought it was somewhere more intimate.
Oh, no, that's just my nickname for it. No, the day I met the Tuskars for the first time, it's something that I think about quite a lot. But no, it's not that. I suppose in in more modern WoW, which is where I've been paying more attention. My favorite patch, I guess, would have to be probably 7.15, probably the Nighthold patch, just because it felt like, and again, it didn't really introduce loads and loads of new things, but it came on the crest of a wave of just absolute winning for Legion. You know, Legion started, and again, in the context of when these things are released, it was really important. They'd come after a really disappointing expansion. And you know how the first time you watched Force Awakens, like, you loved it precisely because it wasn't one of the prequels. And I remember I came out of Force Awakens just being relieved that there was a fun Star Wars movie again, and just going, "Oh, great!"
Instead of sticking the landing, they stuck the start of the race.
Say again?
I said instead of sticking the landing, oh, thank God they stuck the start.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, oh, great, it's not the prequels. We're going to have fun. This is cool. And it was the same with Legion. Like, the second you got into Legion, and the second you started doing your artifact quest, and the second you jumped on your first flight path to fly down onto the Broken Isles after doing the intro scenario, and even the intro scenario as well. And we'll talk about pre-patches a little bit in a while. But all of that was just so head and shoulders kind of above what we'd experienced the last couple of years in Draenor, and more than that, it was like an assurance that this wasn't going to be another Draenor.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I didn't even at the time realize, as I'm flying down with Khadgar waxing philosophical in my ear, at the time I didn't even realize how sick of Khadgar I was going to be. I was like, okay, Khadgar, let's go. You were still on side with Khadgar
at that point. Wow, okay.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it, you floating head. Let's get down there. It's going to be wonderful. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was this wonderful kind of like stepping over a threshold.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're not going to repeat this. Now, it's interesting you mentioned 7.15 and Nighthold and all that, because, and Champion brought this up, we were all pretty restless after we got to max level in Legion, right? Like the Suramar grind was real.
Yeah. But the thing is, Garrett, that's absolutely right. And this is where context is important again, because if you had to take a guess right now, how long after the release of Legion do you think its first major patch came?
2 months?
6 weeks.
6 weeks, Jesus Christ.
The first, it was 77 days after the pre-patch for Legion. The first major patch came out. So yeah, maybe we were all getting a bit worried about things to do at max level in 7.0, and maybe we were all starting to think, oh, I don't know, this is a bit grindy, and these world quests are getting a bit grindy, and this constant searching for a legendary is getting a bit grindy. But the first major patch came out 6 weeks after. It's as simple as that. A month and a half. And that's one of the important things. Now, you compare that to BFA again, where kind of the same thing happened, but we had a wait of like 3 months before the first major patch came out. And that's one of the reasons why people remember it better as well, is because we didn't have time to notice the faults because something else was coming right behind it. And that was the big, big win of Legion. Apart from the fact the content was really good, apart from the fact I really liked the artifact system and the Mythic Plus system, which was all good stuff. I even quite enjoyed the Legendary system because I'm not a Mythic Raider. It just kept coming. And that made every patch that much more exciting. So when 7.1 came out, it was like, wow, that was so quick and great. And look at all this great new stuff. And then you didn't have time to sit on that for very long before the Nighthold released and what have you. And it was just this constant barrage. I think when the Nighthold released at the kind of and with it, the sort of the climax of the Suramar campaign, and everything that came with it, it just felt at that moment that we were on this crest of a wave. We were just like the amazing band releasing like the third album, which is just them at their sort of like absolute creative like genius before they start going downhill and stuff like that. And it just felt like a golden time. And so even though objectively, even in my own head, I probably wouldn't say 7.15 is the best patch ever made. For me, that was one of the times when I was happiest in WoW. So I'll always look back on that patch and just think, yeah, that was awesome.
I will not get drug into how your analogy actually syncs up really well with some of my favorite bands.
I know you, dude.
Oh, man. Yeah, so you're gonna go with 7.15, or are you gonna? Because that was.
I'm gonna go with 7.15. I thought it was great. Now,
you also just teed up Legion as a whole.
Yeah, but I think the way that Legion introduced its patches and the schedule that it put it on, and the schedule involves putting it on the PTR as well, by the way, because that was as regular as the patches actually coming out. I think gave the patches that came with that expansion the best possible chance, to be good. It's not just what's in the patch, it's everything else surrounding it as well, as we saw with 6.1, I should say.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your favorite patch of all time, Garrett?
I had to think about this because, honestly, if I just think about things that brought me a lot of joy, I start to think of pre-expansion events which came in with the patch. But that, I feel like, is going to be a sub-discussion that we can have because, of course, pre-expansion patches are going to be huge because they bring in tons of system changes and graphical updates, and they just completely turn our game on its head, right? Did I just lose Taliesin? I did. I'm going to pause the audio recording and the video. Well, you're just going to see this. What the hell just happened? Enjoy a million me's! Oh. Are you
carry
back?
On. I'm here.
I paused audio recording. I can't do much.
No. I'm good. I could hear everything you were saying.
Oh, damn. Okay. I saw your little hippo go away, so I thought you left the call. So sorry.
No, I'm back. Sorry, my mistake. I didn't mean to stop you mid-flow there.
That's okay.
That was so cruel of me. That was such a block.
That's
quite. That was such a memory. I'm sorry.
Quite all right. So as I was starting to set up, I'm trying to put pre-patches out of my head, and because of that, I think my favorite patch of all time is going to be 3.3. And I know a lot of people are probably already assuming that. They're like, Garrett, I know you've got a lore boner for Arthas. You're all about it. You can't get out of head. Of course, you're going to go with 3.3 because we got ICC. And we got to go take the fight to Arthas. And you got to, and in my own words, come the closest I think I've ever gotten to feeling like I beat World of Warcraft when I got through ICC. But really, there's another huge reason that I think 3.3 is one of the most insane patches we have ever gotten for World of Warcraft, and that is because of the Dungeon Finder being added to the game. That completely changed the way that I play World of Warcraft. I have been a dungeon fiend ever since the beginning of the game. The first time I accidentally walked into Black Fathom Depths and got murdered because I didn't understand that the quest that sent me here meant me to group up. And it was wild, and I loved it, and I've been obsessed with it ever since. And I only got more obsessed with it late into Burning Crusade when I learned how to tank and started going down that pathway, and then started in Lich King actually maining a tank. I full on faction swapped to Horde, went with a Blood Elf Paladin, started tanking. I just couldn't get enough dungeons. And then 3.3 comes, and not only does it bring with it one of my favorite raids of all time, but it brings with it the Dungeon Finder. And I think that is just such a huge systems change and quality of life change to World of Warcraft that really kind of sets 3.3 over the top for me.
Wait, you don't think that the Dungeon Finder just killed WoW?
No.
Like flat out dead?
No.
Because that was the second choice of name for this podcast was Dungeon Finder. right? It was either going to be WoW Killer or Dungeon Finder.
Please, it would have been LFR. I will. I'm with folks that don't love LFR that much. I am not with folks that don't love LFG as much. I like the LFG tool. I'm also totally fine in Classic. I enjoy putting groups together the old-fashioned way. It's fun, and I have actually made friends in Classic that I probably wouldn't have made otherwise because of that waiting period. But I think it works. I think both ways have their merits, and I enjoy both aspects. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
So in more like, what would you say? Because I feel like that patch choice that you've made there is quite similar to mine, actually, in that it's taken you at a very good point in your WoW life. So like, it's incredibly subjective in a way.
Yeah.
If you were being kind of cold and hard and objective about it, since Mists of Pandaria, say, if you had to like go, okay, that is what a patch should be. This has the things that make a good patch. If you had to choose the pure, most perfect example of a patch, what would you choose?
It would have to be one that adds a new zone, because and a new zone that I think is good and isn't, as I kind of said, isn't like generic island edition. So like an 8.2 or a 7.3, like adding Argus, adding anything that adds a new zone and a raid is just kind of it's what I expect from a point number. Whatever that point number is, if there is not a new zone and a new raid, it has failed miserably.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I kind of agree with you.
So honestly, I've really enjoyed 8.2. I loved 8.3. Argus blew my mind. And the same goes for any of that. Because for me, honestly, if I was trying to be objective, I think it might be the Fury of the Sunwell patch, because I think that's kind of the proto perfect patch. Because I remember playing Burning Crusade and that coming out and being like, wait, there's a new zone? What madness is this? And I couldn't go raid Sunwell. I wasn't geared enough for that. That raid was hard. Even though I had been raiding, I wasn't ready to go to Sunwell. But it did give me an entire new zone and dailies, like normal dailies in the way we kind of understand them and we have kind of moved away from.
Yeah.
So yeah, I honestly might tee up 2.4 as kind of this historical of like, know your roots, newer WoW players. Like, this is where it came from. This is where the patches you get excited about and you remember and might fight for, in your opinion, the best patch ever. I think it all goes back to 2.4.
Wow, interesting. Okay, so taking that in mind, if you had to write up a list, and we kind of started that just then, but if you had to write up a list of the things that you would need to make the perfect patch, let's say 9.1 is about to launch a crisp 6 weeks after 9.0, by the way. And you have to draw up a list of the things that you would expect for it to be a good patch. What are you looking at? A new zone?
Yes, new zone, definitely. New raid, obviously.
And so when it comes to a new zone, what are you expecting that new zone to have? Because I think we've seen examples, and we've talked about examples here of good and bad examples of a new zone and a new island, and examples of that failing or succeeding. So what does a new zone need to succeed?
Oh, I think this starts to get too subjective. It's because I really don't like...
Let's keep it subjective, man. I want to know your opinion.
Yeah, I don't like Mecha Guide. I don't like the kind of aimless, like, just keep killing rares and grinding reputation. Like, I really don't like that. It gets better the more reputation you get and the more kind of traditional dailies open up and they start pointing you at things. But I much prefer Nazjatar because it has a more direct story. There's a little more urgency. It guides me a little bit more than Mechagon, and also for me, a big thing for me is just aesthetic. And Nazjatar feels large and epic and grandiose, and Mechagon feels like dirt. That's what Mechagon feels like.
I mean, I can't argue with that. Okay, so a new zone, should be dramatic and exciting, but also have like a through line that guides you through the narrative there as well, I guess.
Yes, I think so. That was true of Quel'Danas. That's true of Nazjatar. That's true of Argus. Probably Argus, I think, is kind of the crowning achievement of that. Like, you want to talk about a story, something really guiding you through the zone, which was massive. It still blows my mind to think back to how much there was just in Argus.
Yeah. But again, not overly well received at the time. I remember lots of voices complaining about the time gating in Argus, the quote unquote time gating, the fact that the storyline was kind of chopped up into 3 bits over those 3 different kind of mini zones over the course of 3 weeks.
Yes.
I love that, by the way. I think that's really good. I feel like that's one of the advantages and one of the strengths that you can play to in a perpetual world, in an MMO which is played out in real time.
I feel like,
this thing would happen a week later, and why not introduce it a week later? I feel like that's, if it's done right, that's one of the strengths of an MMO. Like, and the example I always bring up is Anduin, and watching him grow up and being able to experience people's stories like that in real time, I think is really, really good. I think it's something that the War of Thorns did really well in the BFA pre-patch. And I think it worked in Argus as well, and I would approve of that kind of introduction of content. But a lot of people didn't. A lot of people, maybe after they've been stung by 7.2, and how that had played out with one horrible mission every week, maybe they were very suspicious of that kind of way of introducing content. I'm not sure. That
is the kind of thing, I think they poisoned the well a little bit, or poisoned our patience a little bit with that, because I remember at the time not liking it either. But in hindsight, I look upon Argus pretty damn favorably. That being said, I like the way that they did it with Nazjatar. I can go see the whole damn zone and get pulled in different directions depending on where quests pop. So I honestly, I don't think I would tee either Nazjatar or Argus, the way they handled either of these, as the correct or wrong way to do it. There's things I really like about both. And again, in hindsight, I look upon Argus and the rollout of Argus specifically significantly more favorably than I did at the time. Because looking back on it, it didn't take that long. They didn't gate it that long. They didn't really hold it back, in my opinion, for artificially too long of a time. And it also, if I think about how much there was to do when each stage opened up, I'm not sure that would have been something I personally would have wanted to actually go and grind out in one sitting on day one.
Well, there's that as well, of course, yeah. And Argus had the advantage that if you're interested in lore as well, I mean, I think Argus might be the best patch of all time when it comes to lore.
It was pretty nutty.
And just the importance of the lore. I feel like finally going to Argus just felt so magical, and so something that you kind of assumed that you would never do. Or if you did, you go through a portal to do some missions there or something. And like, or see in like a cinematic or something. But to go there as the climax of an expansion, and to then like get attacked by like actual titans and have to rescue actual titans, and that to be a major part of the raid, and to actually finish off the raid and the patch in the Pantheon with the Titans, and it was all recreated so beautifully from the famous pictures and arts that we'd associated with it for so long, and then to end up with the sword in Azeroth like that was just, I mean, I don't see how WoW could ever, and that coming off the back of having Argus in the sky for half a patch as well, which is another great thing about like 7.2 that came out of that raid. I mean, that just felt like such a huge, unrepeatable event, the whole Argus thing.
Boy, the storytelling in Legion was really good. This is just becoming the Legion was a great expansion episode.
I know. Well, that's the problem with Legion. It was really good.
Legion was really good.
Okay, so you want a new zone in your patch. What other things on your checklist?
Yeah, the other thing that really put 3.3 over for me, we got 3 new dungeons in 3.3. 3 new dungeons. I want at least 1 new dungeon in my point whatever patch.
I couldn't agree more.
At least 1 new dungeon, and that's something where I think BFA has really failed me is adding dungeons, because I haven't outside of a mythic dungeon.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but only so accessible, right? So,
exactly. We're 2 new dungeons shy in BFA.
Yeah, and that's where again the subjectivity comes into play. For me, dungeons are really important, and 3.3 gave us the most new dungeons in the history of the game.
Yeah. I would even argue that it's not even that subjective, because I feel like even if you're not a big dungeon player, a new dungeon, like a new raid, is always going to feel like an event. And it's going to make a patch feel bigger and more impressive just by having them there, even if you're not a dungeon player, I would argue. Because I've barely gone into Operation Mechagon, despite the fact it's a great dungeon. I've barely set foot in there. I've done it on hard mode a couple of times, and that's it. But I love that it's there, and I would insist on a dungeon being in every single patch if I could help it, because it just adds to that whole. You just want to feel like you're being looked after as a player a lot of the time, and there are many ways that you feel that, like just a depth of content. And new systems and things always feels really nice, because you just want to feel like a lot of work has gone into it, really. And that's something that Mechagon and Najjatar kind of inspire. You go, okay, there's been a lot of work. And that's what the release schedule of Legion kind of gave us as well, was that idea of, okay, yeah, they realized how they messed up in WoD, and they are working really hard to bring us this content. And another great example of that is what I would expect most people to say when you ask them about best patches, which is 5.3 in Mrs. Pandaria. Now, were you playing in 5.3?
Oh, yes. I played.
So do you remember? Because I didn't play it, which is why I didn't bring it up myself, obviously. But it's something that people always bring up in any conversation about the best patches.
I honestly, I don't have a great memory for this one. So this was Escalation, which was, the peak of the war kicking off.
Yeah. So you had now the thing people talk about a lot is the way that the story unfolded in 5.3 with the dailies and the reps that led on to new story and unlocking other reps, which would then lead on to more story. They weren't talking about
the new scenarios. We love scenarios. They're the greatest thing in the history of World of Warcraft.
I'm not talking about the new scenarios, actually, no, but just the way that the story was delivered. And this is why I want to hear people's opinions on it, because I didn't play through it. But all I know is that people really love talking about 5.3 when you mention best patches in the game.
Yeah,
but you don't remember that.
I don't have a great memory for it.
Wow. I guess I should have asked you about this before we started the show.
This would have been something I had to go back and research more fully. Yeah, I guess
I just kind of assumed that you were going to bring it up because everyone always does. But okay, that's interesting then that one kind of passed you by.
Yeah, Pandaria was one where I didn't raid nearly as much as I have in other expansions. So my memory of specific patches are pretty murky outside of Thunder Isle being added.
Okay.
And that one sticks out more to me than 5.3.
Interesting.
Way more, because I remember walking out there and being like, oh my God, I've never seen anything that looked like this. And it's funny. My friend John Jacker hates 5.2, the Thunder King patch. Can't stand it. He teed it up yesterday on Twitter as his least favorite patch when I was asking people for their opinions. But yeah,
but it's always used as an example of like Mists being an expansion which was quite poorly received in the beginning, and one that managed to completely turn itself around and halfway through, and atone and give us great content. And I think people like to think that it's because of those kind of mid-expansion patches that Mists is now well remembered. I would argue it would have been anyway, really, because I think it was always a good expansion. But it's interesting that is something that people always bring up. So interesting.
Yeah, there's no raid in 5.3, so I don't remember it.
Wow. So you want a new raid in a patch as well, of course.
Yeah. It's another one of these things that I kind of expect with a new number, with a number change. So
awesome.
That's interesting. Yeah, because looking at all of Pandaria's, I just completely forgot about 5.3. I think of the Thunder King and I think of Siege of Orgrimmar. And I forgot that there was a major patch in between those two.
Wow. Awesome. I wasn't even there for it, so I can't comment. But I do remember coming back and playing a lot of Siege of Orgrimmar once I got back into the game. And that was a patch that, again, went on forever and drew a lot of criticism at the time. But I think people were enjoying that expansion so much by then that they were willing to play through it and wait, which is something they weren't quite so willing to do in Warlords of Draenor by the end.
5.4 also overshadows 5.3 for me as well because of Time of Sile, which was something very new at the time. It was kind of for me, it's funny looking back on it, it's almost a poster child of Generic Island, in my opinion.
It's where it all started, really.
But it was so new and wild, and we'd never really seen a concept like that before in World of Warcraft, where it was a little more open and meandering in the way that it guided you around this new zone. So I look upon it pretty fondly, even though it's kind of the proto Broken Shore, the proto Mechagon, which are two of my least favorite additions to the game in recent memory. But
I would say Mechagon has a lot more in common with Time Missile than the Broken Shore does. I feel like it kind of tried to replicate that sort of just wandering and doing stuff thing a lot more than the Broken Shore did. I feel like that tried to give you very specific things to do all the time, kind of exemplified by Khadgar literally telling you to do very specific things.
Yes, yeah, I won't argue. I won't argue.
Okay, so you want a new zone. You want a raid or a dungeon. You want the zone to have like a vague focus of, guiding you through a story that's going on there. You want it to be grandiose and dramatic. Anything else that you'd add to your perfect patch, Garrett?
Really, that's it at the top. Like,
you're easy to please.
If nothing else, I will trade a zone for a new dungeon. Give me a new dungeon. I'll trade a zone. But yeah, those are the big things that I look for. Obviously, I want bug fixes. I want some improvements to classes. I wish they would get a little more frequent with their updating of classes in general, but that can be a topic for another day.
So you're on the side of people that would like big tuning patches every major patch if it was needed?
No, I'd actually like smaller, more regular patches for tuning.
Fair.
Like if something really not working, let's deal with it now. Why do we need to? The thing I look at it, because I'm a general gamer for Blizzard. I play most of Blizzard's games on the regular, and WoW has always been this head scratcher for me. Where I'm like, y'all really like you like presents. You like everything in a big package with a bow on top. Just get it out the door. Like, is Shaman having an issue? Do something about it right now. We don't need to wait until a big patch. Put out a small one, because I'm used to something like Heroes of the Storm, where they're like, oh, yeah, it's been 3 weeks. I don't know, let's change up half of the frickin' roster in terms of balance. Or even Hearthstone, at least in the last year, has had pretty frequent updates to the balance, something that historically the game hasn't had, but they've finally started moving at a quicker pace. And I think class fixes is or class tuning is where that could come into play in World of Warcraft with more frequent finicky changes, I guess. I'm struggling to find a good word to describe that.
No, I can go with that. I think that's good. So, with all those things in mind, and looking forward to patch 8.3 now, Visions of N'Zoth, what of your checklist do you see or sense that is coming with 8.3? What of your checklist do you fear is missing from 8.3? And how does that inform how excited or not you are for it?
I am a little worried about 8.3 personally. I'm not currently in a raid group. And as excited as I am for the raid, I fear that no new zone is going to leave me wanting in 8.3.
Sure.
Because since I'm not currently raiding on the regular, all I'm left with is LFR, which I don't particularly enjoy. And the events in the world in zones that already exist that I've already been to, I'm reserving judgment on until I've actually gone and played it and lived with it and done that grind for a bit. But my standing at the threshold of this, about to step through, I go, boy, I really would like to go explore the Black Empire in the style of Argus, and I'm not getting that.
I know, and for me, it's not so much the fact that there is no new zone, it's the fact that the zone that there would be is so good.
Yes.
If they did have a new zone, what a zone! Nyalotha or the Black Empire or something like that. And I know that we are going into Nyalotha in the raid, but just the potential of having a new zone Argus style like that. Do you feel like that's a wasted opportunity?
I do. I hesitate to say that. And this is the type of person I am. When there's so much popular negative opinion towards anything, I want to give it the benefit of the doubt because I'm so sick of the negative opinions. And that's how I feel about BFA. Even though
that's fair.
It's not my favorite expansion, that's how I feel about The Last Jedi. Even though it's not my favorite Star Wars movie. I agree with some of the complaints, and yet y'all are so grating and shrill. I'm sick of hearing you, listening to you. So that being said, yeah, I'm if nothing else, like I'm definitely I can say I'm disappointed. I can say that without a doubt. Will invasions be good? I think so, probably, because they are kind of in the style of other features in World of Warcraft over its history that I've really enjoyed, like Legion invasions, for example, with some added complexity and things that are going to want to make me keep playing it so that I get better at it. But 8.3 is looking, it's for me, my premonition is it's not going to move BFA higher up my favorite expansion of all time list.
Sure.
That's
where is it at the moment, just out of interest?
I don't know. I'd really honestly have to think about it. It's higher than I think it would be for a lot of people. I definitely like it better than Cataclysm. I like it better than Warlords of Draenor.
Wait, you like it more than Warlords of Draenor?
That's a
genuine controversial opinion these days.
Such a brave statement by
How
me.
could you be so controversial yet so brave?
Yeah, it's towards the lower end for sure. Because Draenor for me is the bottom. Cataclysm is probably above that. Although Cataclysm's been getting rosier in my memory as time goes on. Because there were stories in Cataclysm I really liked. There were zones in Cataclysm I really liked. But overall, just the disjointedness of it, I didn't particularly love. But, it might be vying for second to last place against Cataclysm.
Wowza.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, and yeah, as far as your checklist for the perfect patch goes, 8.3 is not looking good. It's not ticking many of those boxes.
No,
There's no new zone.
It's not.
There's
But
no
I don't. Frankly, I don't like living life like that. I don't like drawing a line in the sand or
well, what happens? Here's
my check boxes.
It turns out to be really good and you really enjoy it. You're going to have to go back and rethink that patch, that checklist. We're going to have to redo this entire episode.
I think what
we could just film a little insert. But
I think the location we're arriving at, Taliesin, is that we just want patches to be good. That you can deviate.
Just tell the devs that, Garrett.
You can deviate.
Why has no one ever told the devs that? This is probably where we're going wrong. You can compose an email to the devs right now and just say, look, me and Garrett have talked about it for a solid couple of hours at this stage. And, in front of 100 or so people. And we agree that you should just make patches good.
We solved it.
Why don't you do that?
We solved it. We made we really came to a hard truth.
And they'll be like, Garrett, Tally, please come and work for us. This is the kind of big brain thinking that we've been waiting for. And I'll be like, I'm sorry, dude. I got a kid coming. I live in London. Can't be moving. And they'll be like, who will remind us to make our patches good?
Thanks again for watching. If you'd like to hear the entire uncut discussion, including our favorite pre-expansion patches, subscribe to the WoW Killer podcast, available wherever podcasts can be found. Also, please like and subscribe, as we'll return next week to praise N'Zoth.